Matilda, Matilda, has that man arrived yet? No. Finally, someone wants to write my biography, and he's late. If it were Claude Monet, he'd be here on time. I'm not getting any younger. Matilda, when Monsieur Sagat arrives, send him right in. Thanks for bringing in the tea. Monsieur Sagat, you've finally arrived. Have a seat. Yes, you may call me Miss Cassatt. Would you like some tea? I hope it's still hot. Cream? Sugar? 3 sugars. Personally, I take my tea straight. I like it honest, like my pictures. One, 2, you did say 3. 3. Now, you should have found that out before you came. I was born May 22nd, 1844, in Pennsylvania. That's in America. You know, Monsieur Sagat, I'm surprised you want to talk about me. Most of the writers who come to see me want to talk about the men artist. Oh, there's something I'd like you to write down. You do have a notebook and pen. Good. I'm American, definitely, and frankly American, though the family did originally come from France. French Huguenots escaping persecution. How did I get interested in art? Well, I was 6 years old and riding my pony Jersey, and Father made me stop. I remember asking my mother, "Mother, why did Father make me come in? Jersey and I were flying right past Alec. We were beating him. Why does Father always make me stop when I'm winning against the boys? It's not fair. It's not fair." I can still hear my mother's voice. "Mary, Mary, Mary, quite contrary." "Calm down, dear. You know why. I told you last night. Father's hired an artist to come to the house today to paint a portrait of your brothers. No, he doesn't want you or your sister Lydia in this one. Maybe in the next one. If you're good, I'll let you watch the artist's work." And that's what I did. I remember telling my mother, "Mother, I want to be an artist." That's how I became interested in art. But that's not when I became determined to become a professional artist. That happened later, when I was 16 years old.
Welcome to TV3. My new guest, it's a Medford resident, Laura Duggan, who just performed for us a little exception from her one-lady show, Tea with Marie Cassatt. And it actually was around the whole state in 2008.
Right in 2007, too. We toured all around with a show with my good friend Ruth Carr, who does all the sound for me, lots of sound effects. And we went to schools, and elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and many libraries and functions in various places, various sites. And it was always interesting setting up each different place. We would put up easels of Marie Cassatt's work with this production.
Yeah, we need to tell our viewers that Marie Cassatt
is an artist,
yes,
the only American artist, man or woman, asked to exhibit with the French Impressionists. And that's a really important distinction. No one else was asked, to tour with them, to exhibit with them. And her work is, of course, becoming more famous as time goes on. She's most well known for her images of mothers and children, you know, and people. But she was very closely associated with Edgar Degas. And of course, the exact nature of that relationship is somewhat discussed in my play.
And we need to tell our viewers who is Laura Duggan?
Oh, well, Laura Duggan is the woman behind remarkable women that I'm portraying. I'm on a mission. I think it's time that more of these women from the Victorian era that you may not know much about, I want to bring them to life for people to get to meet and appreciate what they have done. They were the pioneers of woman achievement. Mary Cassatt was one of the first great artists, I think, to be recognized internationally, an American artist. So I wanted to bring her alive. I remember in 1999, I think it was, I went into an art museum, the Museum of Fine Arts, and there was this marvelous exhibit of her work. And I said, how marvelous. I didn't know there was a woman capable of such art, because I would go to museums and see the men represented all the time, but not the women. So when I saw this, I was determined to find out more about her. And later on, that led to me developing this play over to Emerson College, where I was studying theater. And they helped me put together my first production of Tea with Mary Cassatt, where you meet the lady, her friends, and find out about her. And then we received some grant funding and took the show on the road.
So will not just Medford resident, the Massachusetts resident or other state, they will see that show again and will be coming back? Or?
Well, we'll have to see. We've done a series of that because now we are now moving forth on my newest play, which is entitled Mrs. Jack at Fenway Court. And of course, she is the remarkable woman who built Fenway Court, now known as the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. And that's another story where I wanted to find a story about the woman who built that house.
Yeah, and I know the Medford resident, they already watched that show in May 16. It was at 2 p.m. at the Grace Episcopal Church, and I hope it was great. I didn't make it because my son was having a concert at his school, so, but hopefully we will see that again.
The show is going to be in Needham on November 15th at 1 o'clock at their library there. And that show was multimedia. And it was a lot of fun because we had film sequences within the play. We spent a whole day filming at a wonderful inn, the Charles Street Inn. They gave us permission to film there. It's an 1860 townhouse, very much like the house that Mrs. Gardner and her husband lived in on Beacon Street. You know, that was one of their residences.
Yes.
So we filmed there, and we have scenes from that incorporated in the new play. And there's, in fact, one scene in which I live act to my film self, which was very interesting. So my film self is reacting to my live self, and my live self to my film self. Does that make sense?
A little bit. So, and now we let our viewers to see an exception from a second character by Laura Duggan, Mrs. Jack.
Right. The first character you're going to see in the selection from my new play is Mrs. George Weatherby. And she is of the Brahmin persuasion class in Boston. She's actually the character is patterned after my husband's grandmother, who was very kind of a prominent and I loved the way she carried herself, and a lot of that character has Mrs. Peyton in it, another interesting lady. She introduces the play, and that's what you'll see first. Then you will meet, of course, Mrs. Jack, and followed by her dear friend, Mrs. Julia Ward Howe, another very interesting lady who wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic, great suffragette. And finally, back again to bring a finale to these little excerpts is Mrs. Jack herself, who will come back at the end.
Great. So
Okay.
let's see it.
George, please do hurry. You know how Mrs. Gardner is when a guest is late. She locks her door. Traffic tonight is terrible. Well, it is the first night of the new year, 1903, and everyone, who is anyone, is trying to get in to see Mrs. Jack's new house before 9 p.m. Imagine an Italian palace right here in Boston. did you get an invitation too? Lovely. Aren't you friends of Edith Wharton from New York? George, do hurry. He's taking forever to find a place to leave our carriage. You know, from the outside, this Fenway Court doesn't look like much. Rather like some medieval nunnery, don't you think? Certainly Mrs. Jack is no nun. Oh, did you hear about her and Mrs. Howe's nephew, the novelist, Frances Marion Crawford? Well, I never. You can understand why my mother could never invite her to any of our sewing parties. But I do want to see what's behind those walls. Come along, George. See you inside. Good evening. My name is Mrs. Isabella Stewart Gardner, known to some of you as Mrs. Jack. Belle to my friends. Tonight I'm having a grand gala to celebrate the opening of my new house, Fenway Court. I designed it myself. Look at all of Boston's finest in such a rush to get in to see my Fenway Court. I remember when your doors were closed to me when I first arrived from New York, the new bride of Jack Gardner. Some of you still haven't forgiven me for snagging Boston's most eligible bachelor. How did I get Jack? I made him laugh and feel that he was the witty one. Jack, I wish you were here with me tonight. Yes, Bulgy. All of my guests are first required to ascend the left staircase to where I'm standing here so that I might properly greet them, and then descend the right staircase to the ground floor of the music room below. During the concert, I will be up here, while they are down there. Tell Maestro I will signal him like this when it's time to start the music. Jack, I was meant to create this house. Belle has always wanted to design her own house. As you know, here in Boston, 1903, a lady isn't allowed to be an architect. Clever woman that she is, Belle found a way around convention. She hired a second-rate architect, a Willard T. Sears, and then did the designing part herself. Mrs. Isabella Stewart Gardner is not just a muse for other artists. She's an artist in her own right. Fenway Court proves it. I hope you enjoyed visiting Fenway Court. C'est mon plaisir. It was my pleasure.